Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I think it's on. Welcome to the January 24th Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee. We have 4 bills to review today. Most members are kind of trickling in, so we'll just go ahead and get started. We'll start with Senate Bill 6138, since the wonderful Sharon Shoemake is here.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kim Cushing, staff to the committee. Senate Bill 6138 is relating to promoting and establishing thermal energy networks. A thermal energy network uses a network of pipes to connect multiple buildings together for space heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. The connected buildings rely on thermal sources and sinks such as geothermal, surface water, waste heat, and the air. Under the bill before you, it defines thermal energy networks as all real estate, fixtures, or property involved in a utility-scale project to supply thermal energy, which is piped non-combustible fluids that transfer heat into and out of buildings for the purpose of eliminating any on-site greenhouse gas emissions from heating and cooling or improving energy efficiency. The bill authorizes gas and electric companies to deploy a network in their service territories, subject to the oversight from the UTC for investor-owned companies, or a governing body for the non-IOUs. It specifies a PUD or municipal electric utility may own, operate, or manage a network in Washington. If a network is approved by the UTC, the company may propose to recover the cost of building and operating the project from ratepayers in a rate case. The bill also establishes a network pilot project program for gas companies. It requires the UTC to provide project approval and Commerce to award grants for pilot projects subject to the availability of amounts appropriated. It gives priority to a gas company to develop network pilot projects in its service territory. And it directs Commerce to award grant funding to offset the gas company's costs necessary to build and operate a pilot project. It directs the UTC to determine the cost difference between the company's lowest reasonable cost resources under their current practices and the cost of building and operating a network pilot project, and the grant may not exceed this amount. It directs the UTC and Commerce to consider specified criteria when approving a network pilot project and awarding grants, and this includes who is served by the pilot project, who works on the projects, customer protections, and project benefits. It directs the investor-owned gas company to include a solicitation for network pilot projects and requests for proposals for energy resources, and it directs JLARC to evaluate the network pilot project and report to the legislature within 3 years of the bill's effective date. The bill also amends a gas company's obligation to serve to include providing thermal energy through a network, and it authorizes a gas company or a combination utility to combine gas operations and networks into a single rate base with approval from the UTC under a multi-year rate plan. There is a fiscal note available. It estimates $332,000 for the 23-25 biennium and $541,000 for the 25-27 biennium, and this includes costs for JLARC to do its evaluation, as well as for Commerce to administer the grant program, and some rulemaking for the UTC. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? All right, thank you so much. Senator Shoemake, welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Sharon Shoemake, and I'm the state senator from the 42nd Legislative District. So what the heck is thermal energy network? I know many of you are wondering that. So a thermal energy network just basically moves heat around, often by using water. And what's really critical about this is you can use waste heat. You can also use this as a way to store heat. So if you're generating heat during a time, or if you're generating electricity during a time where it's not especially useful, this kind of works as a battery, oftentimes that you can put under a building, which is kind of cool. District heating is also an example. Those of you who have been on our little trips to Denmark might have seen a district heating example. The one I saw was a farmer was burning excess straw and waste products from agriculture, and then using that to heat water, which was then being pumped into heating homes. And so that's a great example of thermal energy. There's also a new company in my district that is using wastewater from sewage. So when your dishwasher has all that hot water left over from washing your dishes, oftentimes they'd actually have to spend money expelling that waste heat. And in this case, what they can do is they can store it in the pipes, sometimes using compressed gases and refrigerants to store and heat it up, et cetera. And then they can use that to heat a building down the block or heat that building or use it in all sorts of cool purposes. So if you... The definition of energy efficiency in heating is kind of funny. It's like how much energy did you, like how many calories of gas or whatever are you burning to create heat? Because we're actually moving heat around, we can get over to 100% efficiency, which is wild to me. The first time I heard that, I was like, someone must have this wrong. But that's because they're able to get it by moving heat around, especially when you pair it with a heat pump, which is kind of cool. So these companies kind of exist, but what this bill would do is it would bring them under the UTC, it would authorize them specifically, and it would allow gas and electric companies to use this as one of the ways of thinking about energy as a service. So I do think this should be regulated. These are natural monopolies, just like gas and electricity companies are. And so it also then creates a little bit of a pilot project. The other nice thing about this is, you know, energy storage, we're talking about really efficient heating and cooling potentially, but also this is requiring building a bunch of pipes. So as we think about our just transition and we worry about what's going to happen to the folks that are building pipes out right there for natural gas, this is just a natural replacement for those set of skills and that knowledge. So we're providing regulatory authority, regulatory oversight, and you heard a little bit about the pilot project to kind of experiment with these pieces. There is an amendment in the House that fixes one of the issues that you might hear from Seattle City Light, and I am supportive of that amendment, and I thank you.
Any questions for our prime sponsor? All right, thank you so much for joining us today. You explained it so well. All right, with that, I'm going to suspend the public hearing on Senate Bill 6138 and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 5992.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, again, for the record, Kim Cushing's staff with the committee. Senate Bill 5992 requires applicants seeking energy facility site certification for an energy facility that generates electricity using renewable resources to provide evidence of an adequate water supply for the project. For some brief background, created in 1970, the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council is the permitting and certifying authority for siting major energy facilities in Washington. An FiXCO site certification agreement authorizes an applicant to construct and operate an energy facility in lieu of permits or documents required by any other state agency or subdivision. As part of the site certification agreement process, FiXCO issues all state and federal air water discharge permits, and its application review process includes conducting an environmental review pursuant to the Washington State Environmental Policy Act. For the purposes of FiXCO, a renewable resource means water, wind, solar energy, geothermal energy, renewable natural gas, renewable hydrogen, wave, ocean, or tidal power, also biodiesel fuel, and biomass energy. Under the bill before you, it requires each applicant seeking FiXCO certification for facility generating electricity using renewable resources to provide evidence of an adequate water supply for the project, and this includes the ongoing operation, management, and maintenance of the facility. The fiscal note has been requested, and there is no fiscal impact. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? All right, thank you, Senator Warnick. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and Mr. Chair. Stumble. So for the record, I'm Senator Judy Warnick. I represent the 13th District. And my district includes lots of open space. You might look at the other co-sponsors on this bill. We all have lots of open space in our districts. This bill is brought to you just to give a little bit more consideration for any of the renewable resource developments. I am not opposed to wind. I'm not opposed to solar or any other newer ideas that are coming to provide power. But I think we need to stop a little bit, make sure that we have enough information in front of FSEC to make a good decision about location of those new developments. We are looking at changing a lot of ag land into solar or including solar on the ag land, but changing it into wind and solar excuse me, takes up quite a bit of property in some of our districts. Just need FSEC to take a look at if there's sufficient water available to help locate those projects. I do spend a lot of time here in the legislature working on water issues, and so I was happy to sponsor this bill for the counties that are being impacted the most. So I bring this bill before you and would be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Senator Warnick? All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for hearing the bill.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to suspend the public hearing on Senate Bill 5992 and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 6276.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, Adam Brunmeyer, committee staff. The bill before you is a proposed substitute to SB6276, sponsored by Senator Wynn, labeled D. The bill relates to the servicing and right to repair of digital electronics. To provide some background, digital electronic products may require specialized tools, parts, and access to proprietary software to repair and maintain. Manufacturers may exercise control over repairs by restricting access to necessary information, components, and tools. They may also use intellectual property rights, software locks, firmware updates, and end-user license agreements to discourage or restrict independent repair. Consumers can attempt to repair their own digital electronic products or use the services of an authorized repair provider or independent repair provider. Authorized repair providers are merchants that have an arrangement with a manufacturer to service their products. Independent repair providers provide similar service but are not affiliated with a manufacturer. The Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act is enforced by the FTC, and it governs how written warranties may be used when marketing products to consumers. In 2018, the FTC clarified that the MMWA prohibits the use of warranty coverage as a means of obstructing service and repair using third-party replacement parts or independent repair shops. Despite this protection under the MMWA, the FTC concluded in a 2021 report to Congress that manufacturers are still able to create obstacles to independent repair through the earlier described methods. Since then, California, New York, Minnesota, and Colorado have passed similar right to repair laws which require manufacturers to make documentation, parts, and tools available for the purposes of independent repair. Under the bill before you, the Right to Repair Act is established effective January 1st, 2025, and covers products that are first manufactured or first sold in Washington after June 1st, 2021. The Act requires that original manufacturers of digital electronic products make available to owners and independent repair providers on fair and reasonable terms any parts, tools, and documentation required for diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of such products. For a product that requires deactivating a lock for purposes of repair, manufacturers shall make available, with the express permission of the owner, any special parts, tools, and documentation needed to access and reset the lock function when disabled in the course of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair. Alternatively, manufacturers may make available options to repair products without the need to bypass the security features. Before repairing products, repair providers must provide to the customer, publish on their website, or post at their business a written notice that contains the following information: steps taken to ensure the privacy and security of products entrusted for repair, or a statement that no such steps have been taken; recommended steps for the customer to take to safeguard product data; a statement about how the customer's legal right to privacy under the state constitution and Washington law; and for independent repair providers, whether or not they use any parts provided by a supplier other than the original manufacturer. The Act does not require manufacturers to divulge trade secrets or license intellectual property except as necessary to provide parts, tools, and documentation on fair and reasonable terms. Manufacturers are not required to make any parts, tools, or documentation available for the purpose of modifying products. There's no requirement for manufacturers to continue supplying materials that they no longer circulate for their own authorized retail providers. There's no requirement to supply parts, tools, or documentation if the manufacturer provides equivalent or better replacements at no charge. The Act expressly identifies several manufacturers or products which are not covered. Some of the products excluded under the Act include motor vehicles, power generation or storage equipment, agricultural equipment, marine vehicles, electronic vehicle charging infrastructure, video game consoles, and electronic devices which read physical credit or debit cards. Manufacturers shall not be liable for any damage to products caused by an independent repair provider. Violations of the Act constitute an unfair or deceptive act under the Consumer Protection Act. A fiscal note has been requested but not yet received. And that concludes my presentation.
Senator Short.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And if this isn't something you can answer right now, that's fine. I'm just, we hear a lot that this bill is like California's or is California's, and then we hear from others that it's not. Do you know the differences between what's being heard today versus what was enacted in California?
The language is similar. One key difference would be the language around lock functions and disabling locks for the purpose of repair. At the moment, that would be the primary difference I could speak to, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you so much for that thorough briefing. Senator Stanford, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Wynn, Vice Chair Lovelet, and members of the committee. I am Derek Stanford, State Senator from the 1st District, and I bring this bill forward to try to address a very simple yet insidious problem, which is choices of manufacturers to create unnecessary barriers to repair of their products. I'll just start with a couple examples. When someone trips over a cord and damages a USB port, or when a button stops working because a little rubber pad has worn out, these should not be reasons for someone to have to throw away a $50 or $500 device. When a device goes to a landfill for a reason like that, it's bad for consumers, it's bad for organizations like schools that manage a large number of these devices, and these design decisions that seek to control rather than compete really limit our ability to keep our devices that we've invested a lot of money in and keep those devices working when we should be able to do that. This bill has been, this concept has been around for a while, as you know. It has been worked on in several other states, and so this bill before us tries to build on that knowledge and some extensive stakeholdering work to try to alleviate concerns from a wide variety of stakeholders. I believe that we have addressed many of them. I think there are a few left, and I am happy to continue working with those groups that remain to have concerns, that remain concerned about some of the issues in this bill. So with that, thank you very much for hearing the bill.
Absolutely. Senator Lovick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Stanford, can you tell me, I know you've worked on this for quite a while because I've known you quite a while. Can you tell me what we've learned from other states that have right to repair legislation?
So a lot of this has been about getting into very industry-specific issues. One example would be medical devices, just kind of working through the difficulty of dealing with repair of medical devices, and that's why they are exempt in this bill. In other industries, like in the agriculture industry, industry actually has responded to the work in other states and has taken steps to set up a portal for that industry. Industry groups have done that, working with manufacturers to try to respond to some of these concerns. So getting into how to define exactly what we're talking about here and addressing some of the federal issues that are involved that's kind of what we've learned from the work in other states and in the evolution of this issue over time, kind of seeing how industry has responded in some cases.
Senator Wellman.
Thank you. Well, it seems like, to me, the heart of the bill is to require manufacturers in the design of their products from the very get-go to be thinking about making their designs specifically designed in a way that allows the average user to be able to make these corrections by themselves. So starting with designing it that way. And maybe that's a really good thing, but I was curious as to why there's this list of products that are not required and are not considered to be in this list. I would certainly like to be able to, I have many of those products that, that were mentioned, or I imagine people do. Why would they be left off the list specifically?
Sure. So two things. One is, I'd say, as far as the design process, what we're asking for is not that products be specifically designed to be repairable, but rather that they not be specifically designed to not be repairable. That they not put in these barriers to make it harder, specifically to make it harder for people to repair these products. But to the heart of your question, I think a lot of these industries, we've tried to kind of narrow the bill down so that we, for example, are not talking about motor vehicles and large equipment like that, simply because of the complexity of navigating what goes on in those industries and what goes on in those pieces of equipment, as opposed to, say, a computer tablet. We're trying to...
You think they're simpler than a computer tablet?
No, I'm saying that a tablet is something that we should start with, because that's something that's widely used by consumers, that often has these sorts of repairable issues that consumers would benefit from being able to repair, and that is, we're going to have a lot of issues that are less complicated than with a car. So that's why we're not dealing with cars in this bill. We're trying to start smaller than that and focus on very consumer-facing devices that independent repair shops and do-it-yourselfers might be able to actually deal with.
Okay.
Senator Wynn.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I was just going to ask, what's your favorite game at the moment?
Well, I have a couple of kids, and we play a whole lot of Minecraft.
All right, seeing no more questions for our prime sponsor, I'm going to go ahead and suspend the public hearing on Senate Bill 6276, and then for the benefit of our audience, we're going to just run straight through them. Testifiers will have 2 minutes apiece. I would ask that our remote testifiers please put yourself in gallery view so that you can see the timer. Up first, we're going to reopen the public hearing on Senate Bill 6138 relating to thermal energy networks. We just have one panel. We have Laura Feinstein joining us remotely, and then in person, Natasha Jackson, John Rothland, and Charlie Brown.
All right, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you okay, go ahead.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Laura Feinstein. I represent Sightline Institute, and I'm here to express support for SB 6138, which would extend the charter for Washington's electric and gas utilities to clean thermal energy. Sightline's a nonprofit think tank working to promote smart policy ideas and monitor the region's progress towards sustainability. As you heard, thermal energy networks, or TENS, use a shared network of pipes to connect multiple buildings and provide year-round heating and cooling through water source heat pumps that are powered by electricity. And these networks are designed to opportunistically use the resources of the location, such as recovering heat that would otherwise be wasted, like sewer heat, or transferring heat from the steady 50 to 55 degree ground or water body temperature. TENS hold great appeal. They rely on tried and true technology. They are highly efficient and emit zero pollution. They leverage utilities' operating expertise and access to investment capital. And they could keep pipeline workers employed for generations. One of the most striking benefits of TENS is their impact on the electric grid due to their ultra-high efficiency. Washington's already faced with a formidable challenge to build enough electric transmission and generation to power the clean energy transition. And a recent DOE study examined the electric grid impacts of various decarbonization approaches and found that decarbonization with ground source heat pumps was superior over other approaches as the best electric grid cost reduction strategy. And it can reduce the transmission line expansion requirements by over a third and the generation requirements by 13%. And networking them together in a TENS can even offer greater benefits by making use of waste heat and load diversity. This bill offers the state's gas utilities a viable path for decarbonizing space heat. If followed, gas utilities can retain their customers, provide continuity to their workforce, and minimize expansion requirements for the state's electric grid, all while benefiting Washington families with clean, accessible, and affordable heating and cooling services.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yes, all right, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am Charlie Brown. I'm here today on behalf of Cascade Natural Gas and Northwest Natural, both local distribution gas companies serving customers here in the state of Washington. We are in favor of this proposal to move forward with a TENS regulatory structure that is outlined in this legislation. We've been working over in the House with Representative Rammel, who has a similar piece of legislation. There are a number of issues that are trying to get ironed out in the proposals, but between the House and the Senate. We haven't had as much opportunity to work with Senator Shoemake over here, but we certainly would be happy to do so. We think that this creates an opportunity for us to have the UTC express authority for the gas companies to operate in this arena, and we think that that is critically important as we move forward into the future of decarbonizing our system along with other opportunities that may lay out there. So thank you very much.
Chairwoman, members of the committee, my name is Natasha Jackson, and I'm here representing the Northwest Gas Association. We're a binational trade organization of the Pacific Northwest gas industry. Our members serve thousands of Washington households and businesses in delivering a reliable and dependable energy source through critical infrastructure. We are committed to decarbonization and are currently deploying tools to help us reach our decarbonization goals. And we sincerely appreciate Senator Shoemake and Representative Rammel bringing the idea of TENS forward. It will give us another tool in our toolbox to reach our clean energy targets by providing customers, where applicable, with an option to source their energy from a thermal energy network. We are working with a variety of stakeholders on refining the bill language, as Charlie said, and are happy to testify at this time in support of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Vice Chair, Ranking Member McHugh, and for the record, John Rothland with Avista. We are here in support of Senate Bill 6138. We appreciate the proponents bringing this forward. As Ms. Jackson mentioned, it brings us another tool to serve heating loads with non-emitting technology, so we look forward to exploring it. As others have mentioned, there are constructive conversations going on around this bill, mostly around regulatory provisions, and I think we're making progress in landing on something that folks can be agreeable to. Our main ask is that we keep the parameters for the pilot project as flexible as possible. The purpose of the pilot is to assess the viability and the opportunities for deployment. So regardless of what the program looks like or where it's located, we can achieve those learnings, and so we'd like to avoid some of the technical and regulatory barriers that might exist. So we look forward to exploring this opportunity. Avista has a potential thermal energy network that we are entertaining right now. We hope this bill provides the financial and regulatory incentives to make it happen, so we appreciate your support.
Senator Wellman.
Thank you very much. And I was able to visit Denmark and visit the location that Senator Shoemake was talking about. And that actually was a location that started as a thermal energy, where they had determined this was what they would do, so that they piped the entire island pretty much to allow for that heat to heat all the homes. while we in the state have, I think in a very farsighted way, created rules that require us to look ahead in terms of where people will go, how land will be developed across the state, and yet I never see something like this built into. We know that's going to be built out. This must be considered as one of the options for a build out of a community. Would that help this from your terms, or is this an after the fact? John, I thought maybe you could answer
Senator
this.
Woman, thank you for that question. Absolutely. And as we look at this, we are looking at a project with a tribal partner that would be a new development. So we would deploy this as a way to heat this development from the onset and use the expertise of our utility, which is basically a pipe system, to build out that system and use it to see how that works and like I say, achieve the learnings of that, and then figure out if there are opportunities to displace some of the traditional gas service we provide with this technology. But this is probably the most cost-effective way to get this in the ground.
That's what I thought. Thank you very much.
Senator Banky.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Quick question about local control. Is there any issues that you have with this, or is this going to align with a little bit more control from locals' voices, concerns that are projects that are going to be created or generated in local jurisdictions? We've had a couple of those in the past, so I thought I'd ask.
Understood. There is language being considered in the bill. We will have to go through the regulatory processes to get UTC approval, but I think the bill language will state that doesn't mean the local jurisdiction will still have their say on this. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your testimony. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 6138 and open the public hearing on the bill we have not heard yet today, which is Senate Bill 5826 relating to utility bills. If staff could please read in the bill.
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kim Cushing, staff to the committee. Senate Bill 5826 is titled an act relating to requiring customer charges to be listed on utility billing statements if the charges are a result of implementing the Washington Climate Commitment Act. For some brief background, in June of 2023, Puget Sound Energy filed with the UTC revisions to its natural gas tariff that would allow PSC to recover allowance costs and pass back to the customers auction proceeds mandated under the Climate Commitment Act. The UTC received written comments and heard comments in a July meeting. The order issued in August of 2023, the UTC directed PSC's proposed tariff revisions subject to several conditions, including that PSC should not include a proposed carbon reduction charge as a line item on customer bills, but should include the charges or credits that inure to the benefit of customers or carbon reduction credit as line items on customer bills. Under the bill before you, it authorizes the UTC to approve a tariff schedule that contains rates or charges to recover the costs of implementing the requirements of the CCA. And it directs the UTC to require an electric or gas utility to include a rate increase or charge as a line item on a customer billing statement if such tariff schedule is approved. A fiscal note is available. It's less than $40,000 for the 25-27 biennium for simple rulemaking. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kim, for that briefing. And just to clarify, the UTC, the perspective was because they have allowances, it's hard to determine what the true cost is simply because you're going to auction those off or surrender them later.
Part of what the UTC noted was that including all program charges on customer bills would quickly result in lengthy and confusing bills, and including credits on customer bills would signal an economic incentive for customers to reduce their own carbon emissions. It did also conclude that the approval of tariff revisions is not precedential and that CCA markets and implementation continue to develop. So the tariff will correspondingly require further development. They did also mention that tariff revisions issue are short in duration and are intended only to begin the program for natural gas customers.
Okay, thank you.
All right, our ranking member, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill. I think that it's important that customers know both sides of the equation when when having their utility bills, that they have an understanding. And are there some complications to it? Sure, but come on. it's the 21st century. We can figure these things out. And I would like to note, I think I'm in the wrong business. If simple rulemaking costs $40,000, I'd like to get in the simple rulemaking business and do that every month. But we'll worry about that later. But I think this is important so consumers do have an understanding of what is happening. If it's fair to have credits on there, then we should have an understanding of where additional charges are coming from. And with that, I look forward to the testimony and hope that we can move this forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So our first panel will be Natasha Jackson, Peter Godlewski, and Matt Miller. Up next will be Todd Myers, Ryan Ricker, Susanna Jones, and Eric Pratt. Welcome.
I guess they're making me go first. Chairwoman, members of the committee, again, my name is Natasha Jackson, and I'm representing the Northwest Gas Association. At its core, we believe that Senate Bill 5826 is a transparency bill. We believe that the public should know the costs they are paying for programs like the Climate Commitment Act, especially if those programs were set up by the legislature through a public process that reflects the spirit of transparency with Washingtonians. It is within this same spirit of transparency that we urge the committee to vote yes on this bill and allow all program costs related to the CCA to be line itemed on customer bills. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairwoman, members of the committee. For the record, Peter Godlewski with the Association of Washington Business, also signed in pro this morning. I think following up on the comments from Natasha, I think this is a good transparency bill. The point of the Climate Commitment Act when it was passed was to highlight the cost of emissions and create a price incentive for consumers to change their behavior. Without fully knowing and being aware of what is driving price increases on their utility bills, it makes it difficult for consumers to know exactly how to adjust their behavior. So we think this bill is in line with the spirit of the Climate Commitment Act, helps and helps underline again that price incentive that you've created within the program to have consumers modify their behavior. So thank you.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Matt Miller here for Puget Sound Energy in support of this bill. We believe in price transparency. That's partly why we brought the tariff. We have very thorough rate proceedings that go on at the UTC. They last almost a year, and we think that both the costs and the benefits of the CCA should be put on our bills for our customer to see. Those rate proceedings at the UTC include many interveners like customers, advocates, and other interested parties, and we know they have a lot to balance. So with that, we urge your support of the bill and happy to take any questions. Senator Trudeau.
Thank you. I'm curious, when you say that you want transparency, but do we know what all of the factors are? Because what we heard a little bit from staff and others is that there's a lot of unknowns. We know there's another bill in this committee about price transparency from the industry. So I'm just curious, when you say you want customers to have all the information, but then at the same time we don't seem to have all the information, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so for a regulated utility, right, we're fully regulated by the Utilities and Transportation Commission. That's when we set rates, it goes through that year-long rate proceeding, usually a multi-year rate process. And it includes a lot of testimony, filing. We're pretty transparent in that regard. The CCA is a new program that we're setting up, right? And we're figuring out how to navigate it as we go. And it has both costs and benefits that accrue to customers. And we think those are the things that should be included.
All right, go ahead. Oh. So how, if we don't know what the cost drivers are, I guess I'm not understanding. So would PSC be in the position of determining what goes into the cost that you're passing on to the consumer?
You mean from the CCA?
Correct.
Right, so we'd get a number of free allowances that we're then required to consign or sell at auction, a certain number of those, right? And we use that to eliminate the financial burden for low-income customers per the statute, as well as I think we apply the rest back on bill discounts. And depending on when we sell it, right, versus when we have to buy more compliance instruments, there's a delta between those. And we don't know if it's negative or positive because it's all about the allowance costs. So we would file all that with the UTC. They have full oversight of our books and our transactions. So they would be able to determine that what we're telling is accurate. So you wouldn't have to trust us for it.
Perfect. I have one quick, first off, it's good to see that AWB supports transparency policies. There's another one that I'm looking forward to seeing your support on as well. I think following up on Senator Trudeau's question, because the way that the consignments work is there's consigned revenues, you get no cost allowances, and then you can auction them off. But obviously the only way to know what those prices are would be in the future, right? Like it's a market, so you can feasibly sell it. It can be in the secondary market. So the hard part that I'm having, maybe I'm just not good at math, but it sounds like it's algebra that's being done, but you really need to use differential equations to figure out what it looks like. So would feasibly what happen is you would have all the costs associated with it, and then sometime in the future, when you do sell at auction, you can have those prices and say, actually, this kind of mitigates that. Like how would that work timing-wise?
Yeah, so the tariff that we're talking about here was filed retrospectively, right? So we were looking at recovering the cost for the past, I think it was 6 months, maybe it was 5. So you'd have the cost there, and then we also think the benefits that customers would get after we sell these and apply them to bill credits would be on bills going forward as well.
Yeah, I think, and then my only last follow-up question is largely going to be, there's obviously other costs associated with the rates that you see. So would you be willing to add other things associated with costs?
I mean, yeah, I think that's what the rate proceeding is at the UTC, right? If you have to, for example, replace a pipeline, that's part of what goes into our rates.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Next up, Todd Myers, Brian Ricker. Sounds like Susanna Jones maybe is no longer with us, and then Eric Pratt. Last on deck will be Lauren McCloy. Welcome, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Todd Myers. I'm the Environmental Director at the Washington Policy Center. I think that this issue came about because of the ruling by the Utilities Commission on the rate proceeding that was done by Puget Sound Energy. The fact that this rate increase, a 3% rate increase, was due to the CCA was not in question. The Utilities Commission very clearly said this is due to the increased cost of the CCA. The Northwest Energy Coalition and Climate Solutions both also put in their regulatory statement that was the case. So that was not in doubt. The question is whether it should be clear. The irony is that at the same time the Utilities Commission said that adding a line item highlighting this cost would be confusing to consumers, they mandated another line item that said, oh, but the rebate for some consumers must be listed. So at the same time they were saying adding lines was confusing, they mandated other lines. The simple fact is that more transparency, as the chairman talked about, is key to environmental and energy policy. State law RCW 4256030 of Washington law says, the people of the state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. The people in delegating authority do not give the public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The consumers deserve to know what the charges are. This is going to be critical going forward because one of the keys that we need, the tools that we need to balance electricity, especially from intermittent sources, is what is called demand response. Giving consumers more immediate information about electricity prices so they shift away from peak demand when energy is high cost and high carbon to lower cost and lower carbon. More information for consumers is going to be key to that, and we should start with this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Brian Ricker speaking on behalf of Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, or SEL. We're founded and headquartered in Pullman, Washington. SEL specializes in creating digital products and systems that protect, control, and automate the power systems around the world. We work to make electric power safer, more reliable, and more economical. We are 100% employee-owned with over 2,800 employees in the state, and we believe in the values of ownership and transparency. That is why I stand in support of Senate Bill 5826, which would require utilities to disclose the rate increase caused by the Climate Commitment Act on ratepayers' bills. In August, Washington Utilities Transportation Commission made the decision to allow PSC to increase their rates due to the impacts of the CCA, but with the condition that it did not make it a line item fee on ratepayer bills. The reason, it could be too long or complicated for consumers to understand. Washingtonians deserve honesty, and they deserve to understand all impacts of the CCA, both positive and negative. Public utility commissions in America date back to the early days of Thomas Edison and Samuel Insel. In exchange for regional franchises, utilities agreed to open their books to the Public Utility Commissioners acting on your behalf and on my behalf. Their mission is to ensure utilities make a fair and reasonable profit for their shareholders and do not overcharge us for their services. PUCs are intended to protect ratepayers. Our utilities should be permitted to prepare bills as they see fit in a manner compatible with the open book concept of regional franchises. We ask you to support this bill to protect ratepayers and provide transparency to consumers. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Trudeau and then Senator Banky.
Thank you. I appreciate a lot of what you said about transparency to consumers. You referenced the UTC guidance on how this would be complicated for consumers. And I'm wondering, the information that I've received and seen on that guidance has actually come from Public Counsel, which is advocates for ratepayers, which sometimes finds itself actually on the other side of the UTC, most of the time finds itself on the other side of the UTC. So I'm curious if you've seen that letter.
Yes.
And seeing that the Public Counsel that represents the ratepayers is also saying that it is incredibly complicated given that we don't have full picture information on the impacts of the CCA.
That's not what that letter said. What the letter said is that adding too much information to the bill could be confusing to consumers. The issue that the Public Counsel addressed was not whether the amount was in doubt, but whether consumers could assimilate that information. I fundamentally disagree that the Public Counsel, which is supposed to be speaking on behalf of the public, should say, don't tell the public this. If the Public Counsel wants to say that and says, look, these are confusing, they should also oppose putting the line item about the rebate, and they did not.
Thank you. I think those are two separate questions, and I'd love to share the Public Counsel letter with the committee because I think that there's some valuable information in there. But I believe that part of the complication, and maybe you can clarify, is that we don't have full picture information on CCA impacts. Would you agree with that?
Going forward, but not retroactively. And that's what the UTC was looking at in the particular case that I think we're both talking about, was that the Utilities Commission and others said they assessed the cost impact of what had occurred. You are correct that going forward, we don't know the market. So I appreciate that. But if you're looking at the past, you know the amount and you can put it on there. So I don't think you and I would disagree that we should make up a number and put it on there just to make it up. Assuming that the number is known, I think it should be public.
Senator Banky.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I read a book about a year ago about devices that we can get at some of this data. And
I have heard of this book.
You might have heard of this book, and many in the crowd have as well. I teach some of these options, but having toured Schweitzer Labs as well, getting to the data into the industry, you can go after some of these digital products that would actually clarify and be more transparent in this area. Could you elaborate a little bit more of some of these areas that you see that are already into the market that we can get clarity and more transparency to, maybe General Lady's question as well, and how easy that is to the price? Because we heard a large price that this is too heavy a lift for UTC or even our utilities to go after these digital products to get into the market.
So this is slightly different than natural gas. This is more on the electricity side. But Itron, which is a smart meter company in Spokane, is a leader in this area. They are working with artificial intelligence technology from a company called Sense in Cambridge. And what that does, and I have one in my house, is, and I could actually probably tell you how much electricity my house is using right now. It looks at the unique signatures of every appliance in your house, electrical signatures, and tells you when it's turned on and off and how much you're spending on that. It's remarkable. The first time I used it, I realized that every time I turn on my kitchen lights, the incandescent light bulbs were costing me a ton. And I switched to LEDs, and it saved me about 80%. So we now have the ability to be price responsive, and I don't have to spend my time looking at it. AI and other things can do it for us. Transparency is critical to how we deal with electricity in the future, and these tools are out there. The Northwest Power and Conservation Council says that demand response is a key part going forward. So we should engage consumers, not try to hide information from them.
Thank you. So just to clarify, so obviously we know costs in the past. There's consigned revenues that have to be sold in the future that can offset some of those costs. So the suggestion is that you would have the historic cost, and then at a later date, when they consign those revenues, put those back on there as well.
So the utilities, I would let the Utilities Commission decide on a rate case. If a utility comes to the Utilities Commission and says, here's what the increased costs due to the CCA are, and the Utilities Commission says, yep, we agree, you can put that on the bill.
But
proactively saying, we're going to put this on the bill because we think these are our future costs, then I think I understand the skepticism.
Yeah, okay. But isn't that what the UTC did? They decided that they were going to do it at a later date because not neither here nor there. I think the other component as well is there's going to be other things that impacts the rates as well, right? Whether it's maintenance, whether it's compensation, whether it's profit margins, things like that. Would you want those things on there as well to give a fuller picture of transparency?
Sure.
Perfect. And then that sounds like a great amendment. And then there are other transparency policies that are out there. Remind me how the perspective of your organization or other transparency policies are floating around in the legislature at this moment.
I think when you have a regulated monopoly, I think transparency is more critical. When you have a competitive environment, that competition is what drives the prices.
So in this case, transparency is good. Other cases, not so much.
Transparency is great, and if you don't provide transparency in a competitive environment, you will be punished. In a regulated monopoly, that's very different.
Thank you.
All right. I think you guys are, we've exhausted the questions.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Joining us online, we have Eric Pratt and Lauren McCloy. Eric, are you with us?
Yes, I am. That's hard to follow. My name is Eric Pratt. I'm from the 24th Legislative District, and I'm in support of this bill, this important transparency bill. And I think I'm unique among some of the testimony here in that I'm just a proletariat stakeholder. I'm the end user who sees this on my monthly household bills. And I'm in support of that because I'd like to know just how much the cost coming from the provider is, and then also whatever additional costs are being added on as a result of the state, the CCA and state costs. And it seems to me, if we can have a receipt that I go to the grocery store and I buy a bottle of booze, I'm not a drinker, but if I happen to, it will show me an itemized set of the taxes that are being added on. The Washington Leader tax, and then the 20% spirit tax or whatnot. And for an end user like myself, that's important when we see these taxation amounts for our budgets at the end of the month. And to see what the effects are of something so transformative like the CCA would be very helpful so that moving forward, I can know how better to handle my own energy consumption, as well as how to handle how I support policy through votes or through political means. So I think that this transparency idea to sort of give a window to people like me as to the actual costs is very valuable, especially considering the upset that the CCA has caused us all on our pocketbooks, and is readily apparent by a lot of the sort of bills that are moving through trying to fix the problems of the overinflated costs. They missed the estimation, and it's cost a lot more, and I kind of want to know why. So I urge you to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Last, we have Lauren McCloy.
Good morning, Vice Chair Lovelit and Ranking Member McEwen and members of the committee. My name is Lauren McCloy. I'm the Policy Director with the Northwest Energy Coalition. We advocate for clean, affordable, and equitable energy in the Pacific Northwest, including in proceedings before the UTC. I'm testifying this morning in opposition to Senate Bill 5826. The UTC has discretion to determine the form and content of customers' energy bills, and when it comes to the information that's included and itemized on customer bills, we support transparency and simplicity. However, this bill is flawed because it singles out a single state environmental regulation for treatment that doesn't apply to other program-specific costs, such as pipeline replacement, tree trimming, storm restoration, etc. These program costs, as well as many others, are not listed as line items on customer bills, despite their significant costs, which make up a large portion of customers' overall rates. If the UTC were to include every program cost as separate line items, customers' bills would become much more complex and difficult to interpret. We don't believe there's anything unique about the Climate Commitment Act which warrants special treatment in this case. While it's a relatively new program, it's simply a cost of doing business in Washington, not unlike environmental remediation and mitigation costs, executive compensation, or corporate taxes, none of which are line items on customer bills. We urge the committee to preserve the Commission's discretion to determine the appropriate form and content of customer bills, including the appropriate billing of CCA-related costs. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Any questions for this panel? All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 5826 and reopen the public hearing on Senate Bill 5992. We only have 4 testifiers, so I'm going to call up my 2 in person while we promote the remote testifiers. So we have Commissioner Amanda McKinney and Vicki Christopherson in person, and then Corey Wright and Kate Bruns online. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
All right, can you hear me okay? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chairwoman, Co-Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to be here in person. I saw you yesterday. My name is Amanda McKinney, Yakima County Commissioner, in strong support for Senate Bill 5992 on behalf of Yakima County. This legislature has prioritized environmental justice and equity, so much so that it has integrated those principles into state law. But a glaring contrast to those core principles inherently exists in the current version of this bill. It provides a blatant concession to special interests and highlights selective concerns which promote a preconceived outcome. This legislature just passed a ban on natural gas with immediate effect, citing the urgent climate emergency. And yet staff at Ecology and DNR, who should be focused on mitigating climate impacts for residents, most critically access to water, are instead working on behalf of opportunistic corporate energy investors looking to take advantage of our state's intentionally lax and lucrative siting process. This body's selective outrage against unjust environmental impacts and the overburdening of impoverished rural communities must find clarity and consistency in its righteous calling. You can easily amend this bill by adding just one sentence that honors and upholds the true principles of environmental justice by ensuring that every permitting process in Washington state is fair, equitable for all residents, business, and sovereigns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Vicki Christopherson. I'm here today on behalf of the Northwest and Intermountain Power Producers Coalition. NIPSI is a representative of a regional membership of owners, operators, and developers of independent power generation storage, power marketers, and affiliated companies. Unfortunately, today, testifying opposed to this bill. We remain open to understanding the sponsor's concern and better about what, if anything, may be missing from the current permitting regime. But frankly, the current process is already addressed. The issue in this bill, the adequacy of water supply, is already addressed in the current FiXCO process. And this bill creates duplicative and unnecessary additional barriers to building more renewable and non-emitting energy projects. FiXCO certification is a robust process. I just this morning went through the website to look at all the things that developers have to go through. It holds developers responsible for addressing over 60 environmental and socioeconomic impacts, including water supply. Those who have opinions or concerns can participate in this public process. This bill makes a requirement that already exists and to analyze and confirm adequate water supply prior to construction, unnecessarily onerous by requiring developers to secure such water rights years in advance of when they would expect to otherwise receive permission from FiXCO to proceed. Again, we remain opposed to this bill, look forward to continued conversations, but I'd encourage the committee to look deeply at the FiXCO process. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. I don't know if probably for you, Vicki, but of the levels of water intensity for renewable projects, would you say wind, solar, small modular reactors, or green hydrogen are more water intensive?
You have exceeded my knowledge, but I will go find that out for you and be happy to provide you some information.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be happy to comment and just simply say that I understand where the question is coming from. But in closed basins like the Yakima Basin, where we have 2.5 million acre feet of water allocated and only 1 million acre feet on a good year, any de minimis amount, which is water law in Washington state, has an impact. And so what you're having right now is ecology and DNR working on behalf of special interests to secure water rights for them because the process has already started. And if they approve it at the end and the governor signs the bill, they need to make sure that there's water there. And so you have state agents working on behalf of the government, not the residents. That's not how it should work.
Okay. First off, thank you so much for traveling all this way as well. And just to answer that particular question, nuclear and hydrogen have much more water implications than solar and wind.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you in person after seeing you remotely yesterday. We now have our two online testifiers. So Corey, I see you popping up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee, my name is Corey Redd. I'm a county commissioner in Kittitas County. I represent District 1, the eastern half of the county. And while this seems like a simple text amendment, the term adequate water supply is loaded with decades of case law adjudicating an over-allocated river basin water rights literally down to the molecule. As Commissioner McKinney said, in a good year on the Yakima, we are still under-allocated. Kittitas County has been on the forefront of the challenges surrounding both the impacts of new groundwater use on existing surface water rights and the conversion of irrigated farmland to renewable energy facilities. In fact, our county has a dubious distinction of being the subject of not one but two New York Times feature articles on both of these subjects. This text amendment will ensure new energy facilities will fit within the delicate balance of residential use, in-stream flow for fisheries, and agricultural supply to continue a $5+ billion industry. In an era of declining snowpack supply, it is critical that efforts to alleviate climate challenges do not impede the decades of work already accomplished ensuring water supply will continue to millions of users. Existing entities exist to not only ensure the balance of new energy facility water supply can be examined at the local level, but also work to bring the challenges of siting these projects into a larger conversation that brings proponents to the big table already in place with tribal, agricultural, and municipal interests working proactively on these issues. Without this simple text amendment, there is no requirement for energy projects to join this conversation. Thank you for your consideration, and I ask for your ultimate support of this small but important text amendment to ensure over 40 years of work continues in the right direction. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, and I know Senator Warnick has been there for so much of that conversation in the Yakima Basin. Really appreciate her leadership. All right, Kate.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Wynn, Vice Chair Levelett, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kate Bruns, and I'm the Washington Policy Manager with Renewable Northwest, a regional nonprofit renewable energy advocacy organization. Our members are a combination of renewable energy businesses and environmental and consumer groups. We are testifying today in opposition to Senate Bill 5992, reiterating many of the concerns that NIPSI voiced here. The FSEC clean energy siting process already has requirements to analyze and confirm adequate water supply in the project development process. Otherwise, construction cannot commence on a clean energy project. We are concerned that this legislation unnecessarily complicates that timeline for developers to prove adequate water supply. This creates a challenging hurdle to build the projects that our state needs and mandates under CETA. Pushing this timeline from pre-construction back to a pre-application requirement means developers would have to prove a water supply sometimes 5 years before their project construction begins. That is a lengthy and costly process to achieve, and we feel this regulation adds further difficulties to building clean energy while those concerns can be met through the existing FSEC process. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Any questions for this panel? All right, seeing none, thank you for joining us. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 5992 and reopen the public hearing on Senate Bill 6276. We have a number of testifiers. I'm going to pull up a remote panel first, and then we will have an in-person panel after. So our first panel online will be Pam Clough, Laura Cohen, Mitch Kramer, and Marsha Cutting. And as those guys are promoted, our first in-person panel will be Eric Wareham. Let's see, other in-person. I saw Charlie Brown and Jeff Gombosky. But we're going to start with our remote panel. Oh, you are in person. Fantastic. All right, we'll take you first then.
How much time? You get about a minute and a half. Okay, thanks. When that turns red, then you need to wrap up.
Okay. Good morning. I am Marsha Cutting. I live on Bainbridge Island, and I am on the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment. I'm here to support Senate Bill 6276 because of the frustration that I and others have experienced in getting our wheelchairs repaired by the two national wheelchair sales and repair companies. The money in the wheelchair business is in sales. Companies do get paid for repairing chairs, but not nearly as much as they do for selling them. Once, when my chair needed repair, the company was short of repair technicians. One of them said that they had 5 open positions. There is no national certification for repair technicians. My informant said that the company looks for people with mechanical ability and has them watch some videos. My 4-year-old wheelchair, with a list price of $38,000, spent months in their shop, was never fixed, and finally went to a scrap metal dealer. Without a functioning chair, wheelchair users risk being confined to their homes or worse, to their beds, where many risk getting devastating pressure injuries. This bill would help us because many, if not most of us, have a mechanically adept friend or relative who could fix our chair if they had access to the necessary parts, tools, and schematics. They have an investment in keeping our chairs functioning and nothing to be gained by sending them to the landfill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing that testimony. I was shocked recently when a family member had to pay around $10,000 for a non-mechanized chair. I mean, the costs are pretty astonishing and the impacts are profound. So thank you so much for joining us today. With us online, Pam, are you here?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman, Vice Chair Lovelet, members of the committee. I'm Pam Clough, and I'm an advocate with Environment Washington. We are a statewide citizen-based environmental advocacy group. We support Senate Bill 6276 because the right to repair is critical for protecting natural resources, mitigating climate change, pollution, and preventing waste. Americans purchase 161 million new smartphones every year. And that cell phone habit takes 23.7 million tons of raw material to satisfy. And that is the equivalent of consuming an entire state building worth of material every 6 days. A PIRG report estimated that if Washingtonians used our phones for just 1 more year on average, climate emission reductions would be equivalent to taking 14,600 cars off the road. But in order to extend the life of cell phones and other consumer electronics and appliances, individuals and small businesses, would really help us to have access to tools and resources to fix technology, which we don't often have. So we should ensure that Washingtonians have the right to repair, and these are the same rights that folks in other states have in places that have already passed this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Laura?
Yes, hello. Hi, my name is Laura Cohen. I live in District 37 in Seattle. I'm a self-employed small business owner. I have a mobility disability, and I'm here in support of the right to repair on behalf of myself and my spouse, who is a wheelchair user, and for more than 50,000 other wheelchair users in our state and their families. I know the personal impact of a broken wheelchair. When my spouse's wheelchair needs repairs, his life is on hold for weeks or months of repeated phone calls, appointments, documentation, and approvals. I have witnessed technicians spend hours making faulty repairs. He has missed weeks of work, months with an ill-fitting wheelchair, which has caused pressure sores, multiple infections, hospitalizations, and it really has risked his life. If the power assist he uses to travel up hills in Seattle is not working, that limits where we go on a daily basis and how we get there. So this bill will allow the freedom to choose how and when to repair his wheelchair so that we can live well and fully.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your stories. Mitch.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee for taking the time to meet with us today. My name is Mitch Kramer, and I started FiXCO phone and computer repair in Bellingham in 2012. I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 6276. Communities like mine depend on having the option of going to an independent repair shop so they can get the devices they absolutely depend on repaired. Over the last few decades, and especially in the last two, we've seen companies that make products move away from repairability towards a throwaway culture because of greed. Even though Apple has come out in support of right to repair in California, it's my opinion that this is just another PR stunt. Oftentimes, I'm able to fix things Apple doesn't allow their authorized repair shops to fix. One example, if a customer goes in to Apple with a 2017 laptop that only needs a battery, the technician has to tell them, sorry, we can't fix it, it's vintage. Well, I can fix that with aftermarket parts right now that work just fine. Excuse me. People are tired of the monopolistic practices that have consolidated almost every industry in this country, and that includes limiting how and where they can get these things repaired. Although we've made great progress with right to repair recently, we have a long way to go, and passing this bill will ensure I'm able to continue to help my customers get back up and running again when their life has come to a halt. When I talk to my customers about right to repair, I don't need to know if they're a Republican or Democrat. This is a bipartisan issue. Everyone is tired of not being able to fix the stuff they supposedly own. Every day, I have customers coming into my shop who are very stressed out because of a broken device. Many times, I'm acting as a mental health counselor first and a repairman second, and that's not hyperbole. These devices have become the center of our daily lives, and all I'm asking is to let me fix stuff properly for my community. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Senator Wellman.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, because of a letter that I received from Apple last year and read aloud in committee, are you a registered Apple repair shop?
I am not. I decided not to sign up with their program because they wanted control over my independent company, which I didn't want them to have.
Would you explain, please, because the program is free, parts are made available to you, you become a certified Apple repair shop, which I would think would be important. So what control do they want over your company? I'm sorry, please clarify.
Sure. Yeah, I don't need to be Apple certified. You know, I've been in business over a decade, and my reputation is stellar in my community. But they would want all my customer information, all my financial information. They could audit me at any time to see if I had any parts that they didn't allow. Plus, they limited the parts that were available. They only sell parts for certain devices. Where, you know, today I'm fixing devices that are a decade old that people are holding on to, you know, devices that used to be upgradable and repairable. And the cost of the parts at the time that they came out with this program, my company would not have been profitable.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, we'll go ahead and go to the next panel. Charlie, you're first.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am Charlie Brown. I'm here before you on behalf of Consumer Technology Association. Consumer Technology Association has been working on right to repair bills for any number of years. I've been before you several times in the past and worked with Senator Stanford previously when he had an earlier version of this bill. We have reached out to the proponents of right to repair laws that where they've worked nationally and tried to work with them to adopt a national standard based on the New York law that did pass just about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. We were actively rebuffed in that effort to reach out to them and try and get a national uniform standard on right to repair based on that New York law. We still stand before you asking that we work with you and with the proponents on the New York version of that law. And I want to clarify one thing. A testimony earlier said that right to repair laws have been passed in 4 different states. It is true that a version of a Right to Repair Act has passed in 4 states, but I'll send a copy of this document to you, which I believe comes from some of the proponents, that says that in New York, it's just personal electronics that have been included in that particular law. In Colorado, personal electronics are not included, but they do include farm equipment and wheelchairs. In Minnesota, they include electronics, they include appliances, they include enterprise items, but they don't include the farm or the wheelchairs. In California, they include the personal electronics, they include the appliances, but the wheelchairs provision was vetoed. I would suggest to you, members of the committee, that we really ought to sit down, have everybody get together, agree on one national standard. Maybe we could be the model, but what we've got before you is a mishmash of all the proposals that have happened in other states, and we have to, unfortunately, oppose this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jeff Gombosky here today on behalf of CTIA, the Trade Association for the Wireless Communications Industry. We have many of the same concerns that Mr. Brown just spoke to. 2 things that we would like to highlight. First, as it relates specifically to phone devices today, our phone devices increasingly have a significant amount of information that we want to keep private and secure, whether that's health information, banking information, biometric information, or information on photo data. All of that information should be secure, and consumers are making that assumption when they purchase their phones. Secondly, we believe that there should be a program in place for certified technicians to be able to be trained specifically to repair those devices. As Senator Wellman spoke to in the dialogue you had back and forth with Senator Stanford, CTIA has a specific program to train technicians and retailers to ensure that devices are repaired in an appropriate way, also to maintain the security of those particular devices. So at this point in time, we would agree with the comments that Mr. Brown made as it relates to stakeholders coming together on a consensus-based policy to ensure that people have appropriate devices that can be repaired at the same time by maintaining their security. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Questions for this panel? All right, seeing none, we have not called up Eric yet? No. Okay. Before we take testimony from Eric, though, let's get queued up for our next remote panel. That will be Dan Wood, Stephen Rhine, Emiy Do, and Aspen Kvicala. Eric, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Eric Wareham. I am the Vice President of Government Affairs for the North American Equipment Dealers Association. And we represent farm, industrial, and outdoor power equipment dealers across North America. We have 66 dealer locations in the state of Washington. First, I want to start by thanking Senator Stanford and Representative Gregerson, who have championed this issue. Going back to 2018, we've had been engaged in dialogue with both of those officials. And I think that that's propelled our industry in a race towards the top, not to the bottom. Our industry now is a leading example of one that supports customer self-repair. And that really culminated recently last year in several MOUs, memorandums of understanding, between the major stakeholders in our industry, the now up to 5 OEMs that cover about 90% of all the equipment sold in the United States, and the American Farm Bureau Federation. And those MOUs were ratified by each individual state farm bureau, including Washington State. The beneficiaries of those MOUs are owners and independent repair shops. We make all of our similar diagnostic parts, tools, and documentation available to dealers is directly available to owners and independent repair shops. So we are very different from a lot of industries you're hearing from today. We still have continued concerns about modification of that equipment when it relates to safety or emissions issues. We are part of the Illegal Tampering Coalition. That's 27 national and regional associations. And it's not just manufacturers and retailers. We also have end user groups such as the Latino Landscape Network and the International Union of Operating Engineers that have concerns about modified equipment and their users' ability to use them safely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, our next panel is up. Dan, are you ready?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to unmute and turn video on. I'm Dan Wood with Washington Dairy Federation. My farmers are telling me that the right to repair their equipment is important to them, and we urge you to restore the right to repair farm equipment as it was in the original bill. The national MOU that was just referenced covers only those companies, there are 5, maybe 6, that signed the MOU, and it can be canceled with as little as 30 days notice. In 2018, there was an MOU similar to that in California, but it didn't work. And now there are active lawsuits in the Midwest over repair of farm equipment. Robotic milkers, feed pushers, and a lot of equipment for specialty crops in our state are not covered by the MOU. The bill provides for the ability of a third party to repair equipment at a fair and reasonable cost. If that is important for cell phones and cameras, it should be all the more important for equipment for our farmers who feed the world. I ask you to please restore the farm provisions to Senate Bill 6276, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. All right, next we have Stephen.
Hello, I'm Stephen Ryan. I operate a small electronics repair shop here in Vancouver, Washington. I'm here in support of SB6276, the right to repair. As an independent repair shop, we need easy access to repair documentation, schematics, parts, and tools from manufacturers so we can repair electronic devices economically without having to spend hours reverse engineering to repair the device. This initiative is pivotal in extending the life of items, steering them clear of landfills and recycling centers. Right to repair will help bolster both small repair establishments and the citizens of Washington State. Let's prioritize the mantra of reduce, repair, reuse, recycle for a sustainable future for Washington.
Thank you. All right.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer them.
Oh, yeah, hang around. We'll see. All right, next we have Emily.
Good morning, Chair Wang and members of the committee. My name is Emiy Do, and I'm a sophomore at the University of Washington. I support Right to Repair because as a student, I understand how vital technology is in the current educational ecosystem. Teachers rely on PDFs and not worksheets and textbooks. My peers use tablets for note-taking and not paper and pencil, and some classes are only offered remotely for me to be able to graduate. When technology breaks, I've seen my classmates spend hours at outdated computer labs or frantically trying to text a 10-page essay on their cell phones. Repair needs to be accessible and affordable, and this bill would help ensure that Washington students aren't getting held back from getting the most out of our education. Additionally, at UW, I host campus-wide trash pickups every Tuesday, and we've found everything from broken motherboards to household appliances. Yesterday, we found a broken microwave tossed on the side of a hill. E-waste contains proportionately higher levels of toxins in our waste system that affect our environment. E-waste is a huge issue, and this bill is one way that we can minimize it. Students and non-students alike need accessible and affordable repair options for the sake of our education and for the health of the planet. So please support Right to Repair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we have our last testifier on this panel, which is Aspen, I want to make sure to call up our next panel. Joining us in person will be Nora Pilato-Burns, and joining us online, Dustin Brighton, Ashley Sutton, Michael Transu, and Darbi Gottlieb. With that, we still need to hear from Aspen.
Thank you, Chair Nguyen and members of the committee. My name is Aspen Kvicala. I am in the 7th Legislative District, and I'm here today representing Methow Recycles. We're a nonprofit in TWISP, and we provide recycling and waste prevention services for our community. For 6 years, we've also been offering free repairs through a monthly program called the Repair Cafe, where local residents volunteer their time to repair people's things. Our fixers have a high success rate, saving our community money and saving space in our landfill. Yet repair is about so much more than simply a fixed object. Yes, the cost savings and waste reduction benefits are incredibly important. But what we found since starting the Repair Cafe is that repair builds community and preserves rural values. And I think Senator Short and those of you who live in rural Washington will understand this. Being able to repair makes us more resilient in rural communities where we don't always have access to services. Out here, when something breaks, you rely on each other. You and your neighbor are the plumber and the electrician and the sewer and the mender. So repair is really huge here. And a big challenge for our fixers that we've experienced at the Repair Cafe are that manufacturers either intentionally withhold repair information or intentionally use parts that require specialized tools in order to fix them. So Bill 6276 helps people like our fixers because it makes available valuable repair information and tools, which empowers us to continue to rely on each other out here in rural Washington. So please support this bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us. And I don't see any questions for this panel. So Nora, why don't you go ahead as we promote our last remote testimony for this panel.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lovelet, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Nora Palato-Burns here on behalf of TechNet here in respectful opposition to 6276 today. Repair bills have always been consumer-oriented, and as such, we are concerned with a number of provisions in the bill that threaten public safety and personal data privacy, which undercuts the goal of consumer welfare. Specifically, 6276 lacks necessary business-to-business and business-to-government exemptions. TechNet member companies supply critical enterprise infrastructure to local, state, and federal governments that are responsible for critical communications, public safety, and national security. The absence of these exemptions would render it illegal for original manufacturers to selectively authorize access and reset security controls for their products. This threatens the well-being of Washingtonians. While we appreciate the efforts to include cybersecurity and privacy disclosures to consumers, mandating tools to unlock personal devices that contain sensitive personal information such as banking details, consumer health data, and intimate images invites malicious actors instead of deterring them. For these reasons, we must continue to oppose 6276. Thank you.
All right, joining us online, Dustin.
Hello, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you. Members of the committee, my name is Dustin Brighton. I represent the Repair Done Right Coalition. Today, we are testifying in opposition of House Bill 6276. The Repair Done Right Coalition is made up of companies, organizations, and people who care about ensuring that innovative products are repaired and maintained in an authorized manner. Many of the reference companies began, obviously, in the great state of Washington. The Repair Done Right Coalition is opposed to this bill because in its current form, it would mandate original equipment manufacturers of digital electronic equipment or part of the equipment sold in Washington to provide independent repair providers with the diagnostic, repair information, software, tools, and parts, increasing safety and cybersecurity risks for consumers and businesses while putting the Washington innovation economy in jeopardy. OEMs currently offer consumers a wide range of safe and secure repair options through their authorized repair networks. Most consumer technology products are comprised of complex electronics, which require specialized training and sophisticated test instruments to repair safely. Frankly, some of these repairs can put the public at risk if they're done without the proper training, including those with high-energy lithium-ion batteries, which are repaired only by trained professionals who understand and mitigate these hazards. Manufacturers want to ensure that their products are serviced by professionals who understand the intricacies of their products and have spent time procuring the knowledge necessary to safely repair them and return them to consumers without compromising their own standards or undermining the safety and security of their products. Our members are committed to working with you to promote digital privacy, security, and repair. However, in its current form, Senate Bill 6276 does not help the citizens of Washington. In fact, it could harm them. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Ashley. Maybe no Ashley, and I hear maybe no Michael. So that would leave us with Darbi.
Hi, Chair Wen, members of the committee. My name is Darbi Gottlieb, and I am the Director of State Affairs for Advamed. Advamed is the largest trade association representing medical device manufacturers nationwide with over 20 facilities in Washington state. First, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We've been engaged on the right to repair conversation in Washington for several years and appreciate that Senate Bill 6276 and the proposed substitute amendment include an exemption for medical devices. This exemption is critically important to protect patient safety and ensure providers have safe equipment they can rely on. We appreciate the sponsors of the bill reaching out regarding the exemption language, as I testified in the House, suggesting a few technical changes. Just want to note for the record, we prefer the exemption language in the proposed substitute, as this more closely aligns with medical device exemptions provided in other states, most recently adopted in Minnesota. This ensures consistency across the country for consumers and device manufacturers. So thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today.
Thank you. Any questions for this panel? All right, thank you so much for joining us. We have two last panels, one in person and one remote. So Maggie Yuse, Patrick Connor, and Heather Trimm. And then our final panel will be joining us remotely. That's Stacy Higginbottom and Nathan Proctor. Welcome.
Good morning, Vice Chair Levelett and members of the committee. I'm Maggie Yuse with Seattle Public Utilities, testifying in favor of the right to repair. As the solid waste manager for the city of Seattle, we are supporting right to repair because it contributes to our zero waste mission. Lack of repair options is a leading driver of significant global electronic waste. This bill will improve the repairability of electronics, appliances, and motorized wheelchairs, keeping them out of landfills and in use for longer. It will also avoid the manufacturing of new electronic products, which significantly reduces greenhouse gas emissions. But in addition to the environmental benefits, right to repair is also a consumer protection policy, an equity and accessibility policy, and a fair and competitive market policy. Consumers deserve options to repair the devices they own and protect their investments, and to do so affordably and regardless of where they live. Small independent repair businesses deserve to operate fairly while still preserving data privacy and intellectual property by allowing manufacturers to have their own repair stores. I urge your support. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Wen, Vice Chair and Ranking Member. I'm Heather Trimm with Zero Waste Washington, and I go around and give talks all the time about zero waste, and at the end, the number one question I get is, what is the thing I can do to be zero waste? And my answer is always, try to get more life out of what you already have. Don't just go toss it in landfill or recycle it. Really try to get it repaired, give it to a neighbor, that kind of thing. You all, probably like me, have computers piled up in your closet or a drawer, and it's because of simple things like a fan or a cord or things like that that I ended up changing over to a new computer instead of actually getting more life out of it. I grew up in Texas, and my grandfather and grandmother lived in Waco, Texas. I spent a lot of time with them. And my grandfather, as a side gig and then as a full-time thing after he retired, had a repair shop that actually looked a lot like what Stephen had here. And I, at the time, didn't think anything of it. What did I know? I was a kid. But it was really amazing. People came and went all day long, bringing items to be repaired. It was the normal thing. It was like no big deal. And so today, my grandfather, who was smart, but maybe not that adept at all these things, he would be repairing all these things that we're talking about today. And it would be simple repairs. It would be no big deal. And this is what this bill is actually trying to get at. And then I would just like to finally just say that there has been quite a bit of work on this bill to get it to you today at a point that we really would like to see it hopefully advance this year. Thank you so much.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Patrick Connor with NFIB, standing in support of Senate Bill 6276. We prefer the underlying bill, but certainly support the striker as well, which I think demonstrates the commitment proponents have had in negotiating with anybody and everybody who's willing to come to the table in good faith and an honest attempt to try and address concerns. On behalf of your small repair shops, we think that the bill is simply common sense. It's your stuff. You should decide who gets to fix it. Whether you want to send it back to the original equipment manufacturer, whether you want to take it to one of their authorized repair centers, whether you want to take it to a local computer or other repair shop, or if you want to figure out how to do it yourself, you should have the choice of being able to do that like you have for almost any other thing that you own. Appliances, automobiles, you name it. Digital devices are one of the few areas where you were denied that option depending upon which manufacturer's device you choose to purchase. We think it's high time that that practice ends and that you, the consumer, are again given the opportunity to choose for yourself the best approach. As you've heard in previous testimony, digital devices have become essential to students, to small businesses, to families. And again, it's all that much more important for that individual to be able to decide what is the fastest, most effective, and cost-effective means of obtaining those repairs. There are materials that have been distributed by some of the groups opposed that have mentioned their workforce shortages when it comes to having an adequate number of technicians to provide timely repairs. Your independent repair shops stand ready to help fill that void by giving you safe, secure repairs done promptly and cost effectively. And finally, I'd just like to point out that so far in state history, we have not seen a single complaint filed against an independent repair shop for any kinds of data breaches or privacy intrusions. And that information came from both the Attorney General's office and the county prosecutors. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Seeing none, thank you so much for joining us. And finally, Stacy, if you're ready to go.
Yes, hi. All right. Thank you, Chair Nguyen, Vice Chair Lovelet, and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Higginbottom. I live on Bainbridge Island, and I'm a policy fellow at Consumer Reports, testifying in support of SB6276. Look, the right to repair is an incredibly important issue for consumers. Without consumers and independent repair shops having access to parts, tools, software, and the information they need to repair, manufacturers can require that consumers use their own repair shops or ones that they've authorized. And then they increase the prices consumers pay to get those things repaired there. They end up incentivizing consumers to pay for expensive service contracts such as Apple Care, or prevent repair from occurring so that consumers are forced to buy an entirely new product. And this is something that consumers care so deeply about. Roughly 2 years ago, we conducted a nationwide survey where we asked consumers about their experiences repairing smartphones, appliances, and vehicles. First of all, we all have to deal with broken appliances and devices. 8 out of 10 Americans at 81% say they have in the past 7 years replaced at least one of the types of items we asked about because they broke. And probably because of the widespread nature of this problem, most Americans at 84% say that they agree with a policy that would require manufacturers to make repair information and parts available, either to independent repair shops or to product owners. That's because finding someone to fix these devices is really hard. More than half of Americans at 53% say they have replaced a broken product in at least one of the categories that we asked about sooner than they wanted to because they couldn't find a repair professional able to help them out. And as a member or as someone who lives in a rural area, I have found that to be true myself. So I would appreciate y'all's support for this bill.
Thank you for joining us. Nathan.
Hey, thank you, Chair Nguyen, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Proctor. I am PIRG's National Right to Repair Campaign Director. PIRG is a national network of consumer environmental advocacy organizations, including Washpirg. I kind of distinctly remember my first time attending a legislative hearing. And in that hearing, a utility representative was talking about solar power, and he said, listen, what the advocates want is impossible and dangerous. Plus, we're already doing it. And I think that we should expect that to continue for basically every issue. And I think that that's what we're seeing here. Like, we did our best to match this legislation to things that are already required by law in Colorado, Minnesota, and California. Nothing that's in here are things that are new requirements. We're trying to extend to Washington consumers and businesses the same legal protections that have, in some cases, been supported by the opponents today in these other places. And I think that that's the right thing to do. And we're happy and open to talk about any changes that would improve this. And, you can see from the list of things that we've changed that the sponsors have been really kind of operating in good faith here. In the 2 minutes that I have been speaking, Americans have disposed of 52,000 pounds of electronic waste. So this is something that we need to deal with. People just want to fix their stuff. It seems obvious to me that when manufacturers control the process, consumers lose, the environment suffers, that right to repair is doable, it's already happening, and we just want to make sure that Washington benefits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, seeing no questions for this panel, that finishes our testifiers, and I will close the public hearing on Senate Bill 6276.
Perfect. And that will close the business for the Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee. Have a great day.